Welcome, everybody, to this very special edition of the Guns Radio podcast. Tonight, we are joined by Mike Lovelace and Trip Atkinson of Joan Red for this very special Evening with Joan Red podcast. How's it going, guys? Thank you for coming in.
Good, man. How's it going?
Oh, we're great, man. I really appreciate you guys coming in because Joan Red. Let's talk about the phenomenon you guys once were. I just want to say, back in the day, you guys would play like Good Time Charlie's, and you'd walk and you drive by the place and you'd see all the people standing out around the place, and you're like, there ain't no way all these fucking people are getting in tonight. and
yeah,
and you knew Joan Red was in town if you didn't see the ad. It was like, it must be Joan Red. It was either. You know what I mean? Like that's the you guys were huge, at least in the area. If not, did you guys see that kind of success everywhere? Like everywhere you went? Like I know in Memphis and Tupelo, it was crazy. But
Memphis and Tupelo for sure. Jackson, Michigan was a lot like that. There were just different places like Poplar Bluff, Missouri. It was pretty massive in those areas, but Tupelo was almost, I'd say Tupelo was actually bigger than Memphis for us a lot of times. It was crazy. Tupelo was always on board for Joan Red.
Well, you guys are coming back though to Memphis on March 22nd. You'll be back for the family reunion show that's going to be happening, and this will be the first Joan Red concert since 2011. Is this going to be a kickoff for a full-time reunion, or is this a one-night stand?
Are a lot of things in the works, and who knows what that could be. So for us, just getting everybody together to do this was huge. Just to be able to. I mean, Trip hasn't been on the stage since Joan Red.
Oh well.
And I haven't been on the stage in quite a while myself, but I hadn't been on the stage with Trip since Joan Red. So for sure, this is a family reunion on many levels, not just for us, but for all the people that we shared the scene with and everything else. As far as the band, the music, there's definitely a lot of music for the future, but we still haven't settled on a vocalist at all or anything like that at the moment. So it's hard to for sure say what could happen after this, but it's also hard to deny the support that we've gotten so far.
Yeah.
Just with this show, we've got literally, I know a guy that's coming in from Italy.
Wow.
To come to this show.
Oh, that's crazy. That's awesome, but it's crazy.
So there's definitely a lot of support out there still. There's talks,
Yeah. So what have you guys been up to since the last time that you all played together?
Yeah, working mostly. Right.
Having kids, man.
Trip can speak to what he's done. Yeah, he had kids and started a successful business and
oh, nice.
Just living in the real world.
Yeah.
You had to grow up quick after playing drums.
Myself,
had to grow up real quick.
Yeah.
Is this a result of the playing drums, or
my beautiful wife and farm?
So, but you, Mike, you said you got 6
I think he left playing drums to be in the business.
So did you have like, how many kids did you have in your heyday?
5 girls and 1 boy.
Oh, wow. You're outnumbered, man.
I had 2.
They rebel. Yeah. You're screwed.
Yeah.
Man.
So what led to this reunion show? Like, why now of all times have you guys decided to get back together and have this show?
It kind of came out of nowhere, honestly. In fact, like 3 weeks prior to the show, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be on the stage again. I'm just going to go ahead and sell my amp and cabinet that I had. And,
Oh, wow.
so 3 weeks before ever talking about the show, I went ahead and sold my stuff. And then, 3 weeks later, we're talking about doing the show. I was like, well, now I got to go buy new stuff.
Damn.
Wasn't it Sean that kind of like sparked this thing though? Coming into town, he was like, "Man, let's do this."
Well, Sean, Sean's band, Sons on Fire, was gonna be doing a tour, and they were looking for a date in Memphis. So I said, reach out to Roach and see what's going on. I said, reach out to these other clubs and owners that I knew. And before I knew it, the next day, Roach was calling and saying, hey, how about we make this a Joan Red show?
Since you're all here anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Sean and I have always talked about what to do with the music and where to go and stuff like that. But, Sean lives in California, and I live out here in Brownsville, middle of nowhere, Tennessee. And, so the logistics of it is hard, but yeah, exactly. But the music now, with all the technology, we can actually write and send stuff back and forth, and we've been doing that for a while now.
Yeah, so you don't have to be in the same room.
Exactly. The music can continue for sure. So we don't have to be, limited by how close we are.
Well, with that being said, when you're getting ready for this kind of reunion, how much of this, especially with you, Trip, since you haven't played with them in so long, how much have you had to really knock the rust off of being able to, when it comes to being able to play the song? Did you have to learn the songs again?
Yeah, I had to relearn my own music, man. It's crazy. No, luckily I got my oldest daughter, a electric Roland drum set about 2 years ago. And that actually started the process of dusting the rust off in the cobweb, so to speak. And then when I got the random call from Mike that, hey, I need you to play drums for us in Memphis. Can you do it? I was like, oh, shoot, man. I guess I better step it up and really take my practicing serious. So started practicing about every day, man, ever since Mike called me. And then got behind an actual acoustic set about 2-3 weeks ago for the first time in about 12 years. So
something about I love the idea that Trip Atkinson is playing drums on a pink Barbie. My first drum.
Yeah.
It's got colors all over it, marker marks, Exactly. It's in a pink room. Hey, we got cool strobe lights though, man.
Nice.
that rock star feel. What about you, Mike?
No, it's coming back. It feels good. It feels good to be back behind the drum set for sure.
Well, that's good, man. I mean, because that's one of the things I thought of when I first heard it was like, man, if these guys hadn't played in a while, it's going to be a pain in the ass to get ready and deliver at the level that they're going to be expected to deliver at.
Easy. Don't be putting all that pressure on us like that now. Come on.
I mean, you kind of already did when you stepped back behind that logo, so,
Facts. I agree.
But what
yeah,
about you?
So for me, I mean, after COVID happened, I pretty much started working at home every single day, and luckily enough, I have my guitar and stuff right there by me. But I've been writing and recording just other ideas for stuff for a long time. Hadn't touched the Joan Red stuff, so there was a little bit of relearning parts for sure. And like I can't believe I didn't remember, a little key change or something like that until I listened back to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's definitely a certain amount of muscle memory that kicks in too. And the first time we got together with Trip, we were thinking Trip might play one or two songs, and then Trip came in and we just started playing and kept going. I was like, wow, Trip might just play all these songs.
Nice.
I thought it was awesome. it was really good to get together and kind of pick up just, right off the bat and lock back in like that. It was crazy.
Did you still have the same chemistry?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think as far as me and Trip, we'll always have the same chemistry. I think I was not certain how it was going to go when Brent played with Trip because they never played together before. But
He locked
Brent's
in.
always been really solid, and they definitely locked in. So I can tell you this: the music's really tight.
Yeah, it'll sound good. We're
As long
excited
as
about
Sean can come in and do his part, we're going to be good.
Oh,
it. Yeah, hopefully
nice.
Sean.
So when we get to Memphis for the family reunion show, you're going to have a huge lineup of different singers. Can we confirm some of the people that's going to be there?
We can, yeah. Zach Myers from Shinedown, Jared Weeks from Saving Abel, and Scott Bartlett from Saving Abel, Chris Brown from One Less Reason, Gary from Persevere. We've got Allison from Roses Unread. We've got a whole slew of singers. Shy from Savage After Midnight, which, a lot of these guys have their new project. And back then when it was Joan Red, that was Shy was Sore Eyes back then.
So when you've got all these guys coming in, have you been rehearsing with these singers?
We have gotten together and rehearsed with a couple of these guys so far, and it's gone really well. I can tell you this: Anthony didn't make it easy for anybody to step into those shoes, for sure. I mean, everybody's like, "Oh my goodness, how did he do this?"
Yeah.
But we've definitely got some great vocalists lined up for sure, and there's some new guys coming into the picture too. My singer from the Tailor Made Villains project that I did is coming in. Stephen Gray. Dustin Allen is coming in. He's got a band that just released their single on March 2nd, I think, called Line So Thin. And Tim Spencer is coming in. He's also a vocalist, and I think he's also done some of the songs with Sleep Theory.
Oh wow!
Sleep Theory is opening the show, and they're also blowing up right now on TikTok and Octane. I mean, they're like #1 slot right now. It's crazy. So those guys are opening the show. They also are going to be on the opening stage or the headlining stage for Memphis in May as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we've really got some great vocalists lined up for sure.
So when you're rehearsing with these guys, you said Anthony doesn't make it easy on somebody to do that. Have you had a situation where it's like, dude, there's no way I can sing in this fucking key. We're going to have to tune it down? Or
No, look, we told everybody we were going to keep the music the exact same as it was on the CD. And if we needed to make adjustments, we would make adjustments with the vocalist, but the music was going to be the same. So far it's worked out real good.
Right on.
We've got a few more rehearsals left to lock in the last few vocalists, but I think it's going to be solid. In fact, I've always said from the beginning, the vocalists are going to do a great job, but I think the crowd's probably going to sing louder than anybody on that stage.
Oh yeah. I don't think, especially when you get to some of the ones like Hero or Crush or those kind of songs. Yeah. Like I think it doesn't matter if the vocalist does a shitty job; they're not going to notice.
Yeah. Well, I keep telling them, look, if you're struggling, just hold that microphone out because that's when the crowd's going to take over.
That's right.
The old I forgot the words.
Yeah, there you
go. Now, I also want to tell everybody that's listening right now that you guys just released a new single called Blue Sky Shy. And, being one of the guys that was there on that scene from back in the day, it was pretty fucking surreal to be hearing Anthony's voice. on a brand new song. Of course, Blue Sky Shy wasn't a new song. You guys played that live all the time, but to be hearing it on a new, I guess, track, like a studio track,
Yeah.
it was pretty fucking surreal. How emotional was that when you're taking that out of the vault, dusting it off, getting it cleaned up, ready to come out? With everything that went down, which we are going to cover in detail later, but like, did that kind of dredge up some old feelings or anything like that?
I mean, Anthony's a part of my every single day, and he has always been. I've had those recordings for a while, and I wasn't sure that we'd ever be able to do anything with them. It started out just some pre-production stuff that we had done for the Side Effects of You album, but it ended up because of the content of the song, we ended up putting Prayer for Rain on the album instead. And so we didn't keep two songs about the sky. Basically, we're like, we'll just put that on the second album. And the song was an instant hit as soon as we started playing it live. So we knew we had to get it out there. But with today's technology and stuff, we were able to actually get it mastered and add a little bit of more of today's type of sounds to it, and just kind of adapt it and get it out there. And it, as Taylor Made Villains, we did a tribute and recorded that song. And Steven, our vocalist, he did a fantastic job on it. But it's always different when you hear Anthony sing,
Yeah.
And everybody that listens to it is like, oh, that's Anthony. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was great.
How many
I love that we were able to restore that.
How many of those do you have?
Very few. We were writing new stuff, but we didn't get to do pre-production on a lot of stuff. There was a song that we opened one time in Memphis with called "Come One, Come All," and I think there's one recording of it somewhere, but we never got to do pre-production on it, so I don't know if we'll ever be able to get that one out. But it was we opened the show with that song, and so I didn't think anybody remembered it, but I've actually had people ask me about that song before. I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get pre-production done on a lot of other stuff. We were certainly writing other things, but we never got pre-production done on it.
So after Side Effects, you guys were starting the work of a second album, but you never actually got to get in and
so while we were recording the album, we also were inspired to start writing more music, and then we ended up with more music that we couldn't put on the same album. So we were like, well, we'll just keep working on it and perfect it and get it out there,
So would a second album, how differently would it have sounded from Side Effects of You had everything gone according to plan with the direction you were heading then?
That's hard to say, honestly, because at the time, we did So Far Gone, and we did No Goodbye, and No Goodbye was definitely going to be on the second one. But when we did So Far Gone, it kind of changed a little bit of the direction of the music at the same time. So if it had been up to me, I would have definitely stuck with what we were doing and adapted as the time went along. But that's the only song that we never wrote. We actually redid that song for a country artist, country producer in Nashville. And a lot of people didn't know that, but it was there was mixed emotions about that song because it wasn't one that we wrote, but it was actually easier when Anthony went in to be able to do something that was already written, and he liked that a lot. So at one point, it felt like he wanted other people to write our songs, and that was not something that met well when we heard about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we had put all our work into everything that we did, and we literally did it all on our own. You know, I didn't think we needed other people's help.
Yeah. So that you guys wrote everything yourselves without what was that process like when you were writing a song together?
I think it was completely different than most other people. We after practice, I would sit around and start playing guitar, just different riffs and trying out different things, and Anthony would get on the drums and start playing. And that's how we ended up writing most of the music, was actually after our rehearsal. We would just sit there and jam and come up with stuff. And Anthony loved to play the drums. And so that gave him an opportunity to get back there and go crazy. And then we would have to teach it to Trip, you know.
That's a thing that I don't think a lot of people knows about Anthony, is that he could play a lot of different instruments. He could play guitar. He just didn't on stage, not very much. But
yeah, he played a couple times live. But yeah, he loved to sit back and play like Daughtry and stuff like that. And he definitely loved to play drums and air drums. You could catch him all the time playing air drums. We'd be driving down the interstate and he'd be playing air drums the whole time.
Yeah, you see him on stage doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But that's something. Yeah, that's something a lot of people don't know, is that Anthony played several different tracks. Did he ever record something like, "Hey, dude, I got this song," and he throws it down on an acoustic thing? Well, you wouldn't have had email. I guess you couldn't have done it back then. I forget about technology, but did he ever record something like just real crappy and send it to you like as good as he could, but like, "Hey, you got to hear this thing I came up with. Here's a tape," or something like that?
We had some phone recordings kind of stuff that we sent back and forth, but every rehearsal we would set up his little digital camera just in the corner of the room. It wasn't even facing us most of the time, but we would record everything that we did, and then we would listen back to it afterwards and be like, "Hey, that was cool. You know, let's work with that and see where we can go with it." Like I said, I think it's probably a little bit different process. I've seen some bands that go into the studio and write their music there in the studio. We didn't have that luxury doing the album.
I was about to say, that sounds like an expensive way to go about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We paid basically for the studio time. We paid for 3 days at a time to go in and knock out 2 songs.
Oh, wow.
So, and we did it all ourselves also. So that was a challenge. And a lot of times selling the EP is what actually helped pay to get the album done, you know? So,
yeah, that's another thing it's a hard thing to get a hold of, but there was and some of the songs I remember, it's been so long since I've lost that damn CD, but you guys had, I think it was like 3 or 4 songs on I think it was called Spread the Red.
Yeah.
And then you re-recorded those because they sound, or at least remixed them because they sounded different when they came out on Side Effects of You.
Yeah. Well, when we first released them, we did everything ourselves. In fact, we even had put the stickers on the CDs, and I remember a lot of people would say, "Hey, man, I love that album, but I can't get it out of my CD player. Like, it's literally stuck. That's the only thing I have to listen to." But yeah, I mean, back then we were a DIY band. You know, we were doing it all ourselves. Anthony did the art. Anthony did the websites. and ended up doing websites for a lot of the artists that we toured with. And we did everything that we could on our own, for sure.
I've seen other bands since Joan Red has come and gone use the image of the girl with the duct tape on her mouth.
Yeah.
I've seen other bands use that, and to me, because I was in the area, I guess I think, oh, look at them ripping off Joan Red's cover, but
Yeah.
I found out recently that Anthony he didn't just buy a stock photo; he bought a stock photo and then went in and digitally altered it to get that Side Effects of You cover.
That's correct. Yeah.
I think he added the duct tape, and
and we changed the color of the girl's eye as well. That cover has been used on a Japanese comic as well, like an anime comic, and several other things. I didn't even know until just a few years ago that image was not ours at all. I thought we had paid to use that image and it was ours. But I actually met the guy who got the image to Anthony, and he admitted that he lied and said that it was his. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. We had no idea.
The mystery goes even further.
We weren't thinking about that stuff at the time, and she's definitely served her purpose for us, for sure. I mean, the Side Effects You name was also a name that one of the American Idol vocalists, female artists, ended up using for the name of her album, which I thought was crazy. Yeah.
I did not know that, because when I looked it up, I think Joan Red was the only thing that came up. That's wild, though.
Yeah.
It's a good name. It's a good album name.
Yeah, I can tell you a funny story about where that came from.
Yeah, go ahead.
We were actually, going back and forth on album names, and we couldn't come up with anything. And at the time, I was going through a really rocky relationship. And I had split up with my son's mother at the time, and we were going back and forth to visit him while he was staying with her parents in Arkansas. So we'd have to ride together for this 3-hour trip out there, and we started talking. We were crossing the bridge coming back home. And in the middle of our conversation, I was like, we were talking about how it was different. If we were dating other people at the time, how it was different. And I said, another side effect of you. And then I stopped right there in the middle of that conversation. I called Anthony and I said, I know the name of the album.
Oh, that is so cool.
And that's where it came.
That is Eureka moment.
Yeah. So thanks to my ex for that inspiration.
I feel like there's a lot of X's that are going to be inspirations for a lot of these songs if we really deep dive into each of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can't Let Go was about the same person in my life. It was crazy. It definitely made for some good music, but yeah, it's funny how universally accepted those songs were. And how personally they were to us at the time, going through those things.
Yeah. What point did you guys? First off, I've got one question that's not on my docket, but I've got it. But it's for me.
Okay.
The Joan Red logo with the red stripes, was that which came first, Anthony's tattoo or the Joan Red logo?
Anthony was working on the logo, and he liked it so much that he got it as a tattoo.
Okay. So the logo came first, and then he was like, I'm all in on
so the logo the meaning of the logo was the 4 stripes and bringing it all together with the music. You see the music notes running through the background, right?
Oh,
so that was each of us as a member all coming together as the character Joan Red, and the music was what was bringing us together. And that's where the idea of the logo came from. If a lot of people don't remember, when we first came out, our logo was actually, or our emblem basically was a kind of a rocker chick, who we kind of dubbed as Joan Red. Um, when we were coming up with the name, we got everybody got a journal, and we sat there that whole year and worked on stuff. We never told anybody anything about what we were doing, and because Anthony was coming out of Chosen View, I was transitioning my band Patient Zero at the time, and so we were like, if we're gonna do something, it's got to be completely different. And so we want everybody to take a journal, and we want everybody to just pour their feelings into this journal, and think of it as almost like a gaming character. And whatever you put into this character, we're gonna try to somehow create this band out of. And so didn't matter what your feelings were, you would just put those things in the journal. And it kind of just stemmed from that to, okay, now let's put those feelings into a character. And it was before we came up with the name Joan Red. And so we've got this character. She's female. She's a rocker chick. She's a badass. And what name do we give this girl? Like, what's a strong female name? So Joan pops to the top of the list because of Joan of Arc, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the most popular color in the world? Red and black. Those are the most popular colors in the world. So Joan Black didn't sound right, but Joan Red hit just right, And so I had a friend of mine who had designed or had done some designs for like the Rockstar video games company, kind of designed that character for us, and that's how we started out.
Yeah.
So bringing it all together into this logo was really special for sure.
I knew there was a character, and that I had heard people talk about the character of Joan Red in the past,
Yeah.
but I never understood what that was about. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, character can be anything. It can be super strong. It can be weak. It can be vulnerable. It can be anything. And so, as a guy growing up, you couldn't show your softer side a lot of times. You always had to be tough. You always had to be manly, right? But
Mhm.
as a female character, we were able to put those feelings into that and let her embody all those feelings. That's why we gave everybody a journal, because we wanted to put all those emotions in there. We're not trying to be superheroes all the time.
Yeah, and it probably helps with your pre-programmed conditioning to be speaking when you're writing it in the uh, voice of this character rather than
Yeah,
in your own, even if it is your experience you're writing about.
yeah, definitely.
So when you recorded, let's go back a little bit. How far? How did you guys meet? Like, how was it brought together?
So I had a band at the time called Patient Zero, and we were looking for a vocalist. I never wanted to be a lead vocalist. I only wanted to play guitar, and I was fine with writing the music and writing the lyrics and everything. I just didn't want to be a front man. And so we had several guys come in, and one of the guys that came in was one of our best friends from high school named Albert. We were in choir with Albert, and he came in and he had the voice, but he was really shy on stage. In fact, on one show he kind of faced us the whole time instead of facing the crowd.
Oh wow!
And at the same time, I knew that I had met Anthony and Dave Cowell and all those guys. We played a there was a 3-day festival called Dingo Fest that they would hold in Memphis, and you would basically bar hop from club to club and catch local bands at each bar. Well, we were playing at the old New Daisy, and we played. Our band back then was called Lupercus, that me and Sean had since high school, and that was our first band that we started together. And we played, and Chosen View came up behind us and played. And as soon as they got off the stage, I looked at Sean and I was like, dude, we have to step our shit up. These guys are really good, and they're kids, you know.
Yeah.
That was the first time we ever met them. Then years later, we start seeing them more and more popping up on different shows and different events, and you know, they were doing their thing and we were doing our thing. And at the same time, I also knew that their band was also coming of age at a point where people were making decisions about going to college and, you know, moving on into other life situations, you know, settling down and stuff like that. And I was like, well, let me ask Anthony if he'll come in, because I knew Anthony was a great frontman, you know. I was like, let me ask him if he'll come in and just kind of audit Albert and give him some pointers, you know, to come out to rehearsal and just see what happens. And so I did that, and Anthony came out there, and you know, he gave him some pointers and everything. And once everybody was done and left the room, I kept playing guitar, and I actually played the riff from "Show Me the Way" on the chorus. And Anthony poked his head back in the room, and he was like, "Hey, man, what was that?" I said, "That's where you would say, 'Show me the way you fell to pieces,'" and that's where that song came from. The next night, we got together and wrote out the song. And I was like, "Well, that's crazy. You know, that wasn't the intent of anything happening, but that's what happened, you know." I was like, "That's really good." But, you know, I also knew that Chosen View, they had a lot of stuff going on at the time, and that, you know, they were poised to make some big moves for sure. They had a lot of interest, you know. And so I really didn't think much would come out of that. In fact, right before that event happened, I was a contractor for Comcast, and I installed Anthony's cable at his house, like his high-speed internet, because he was a big-time gamer. Like, he played Halo like crazy, you know, and he played like the Halo competitions and stuff. Like, he was a big-time gamer. Well, I was like, "Hey, man, I know you. You know, like, we met years ago, and I think we even have a show coming up this Friday." And he kind of blew it off. He didn't think that I was for real, and especially at the time, because I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but I was the original second guitar player for Egypt Central." Well, at the time, a lot of people were claiming to have some kind of history with Egypt Central, so he kind of just blew me off, you know.
Yeah, they were popping at the time.
Oh yeah.
And then at that Friday, we played the show, and you know, I was like, "Yeah, I told you we had a show on Friday." You
Oh,
know?
yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, okay." Well, you
So
know,
was this in
that,
06?
and then that was before I invited him out to, but all those events kind of led up to inviting him out to our rehearsal, you know. And after that, I looked at Sean and I said, "Look, man, I think I would fire anybody who got in the way of us doing anything if Anthony came to sing for us, you know." And I never felt like that before. I was always a diehard, like, let's keep the team we got and keep going, you know. And I always had the mentality that we would stick together no matter what. But after that, I just felt like it, you know, if things were going to change, I wasn't going to let it stop us. So Sean knew right then that I was really serious about that move if that was going to happen. And I wrote the Patient Zero music after I left Egypt Central, and so some of that actually transitioned over into the Joan Red stuff.
So,
but we were kind of lost there for a while with no vocalist, and then Albert even looked at us that night and was like, "Dude, you guys should just get Anthony to come sing for you."
Yeah. So when did you know that you had something special? When was that solidified?
It really solidified it for me when Anthony came over that next night and we were able to write out the entire song for Show Me the Way. I was like, I'd always only written with Sean, and me and Sean can always just sit down in a matter of minutes and come up with enough stuff to write a song, and so to find that with a vocalist was even more special, kind of, and as good a frontman as he was at the time,
Did he play when Anthony would sing in rehearsals? Did he sing in rehearsal the same way he did on stage?
Oh yeah, he was always 100% when he was doing anything.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine him sitting down and singing some of these.
No, it was always a show. I mean, he was always a front man, absolutely. And even in the normal day-to-day stuff, you could look at Anthony and tell he was not your normal guy that would serve you a sandwich at McAllister's. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could tell that he had another life somewhere.
So you guys got together. At what point did you decide to record the Spread the Red EP?
So after we got together, like I said, we stayed dormant kind of for that whole year while we started writing music. And as we approached the project, we were like, well, we're not going to do any of your old songs, and I'm not going to do any of my old songs. We just want to write all new songs. And we caved a little on like Tortured. Tortured was a song I wrote at like 3:00 in the morning. I just kind of rolled out of bed and wrote all the guitar parts. And I had it for like a year before we turned it into the song Tortured. But I had a little bit of a faster part where the chorus was. And we slowed it down, and it fit what Anthony did on the vocals. So it was neat to be able to combine those ideas and rework something that was written a year ago,
Yeah. And seeing it come together and getting the gratification of this thing out of my head and into my ears is...
Yeah. With Crush, it actually almost ended up in me and him getting in a fist fight because I had the ideas for the guitar, and he was like, well, let me do this. And he took my guitar from me. And that was a big, at the time, that was like a what? You know what I mean? Like, hold on. He took my guitar and then he turned the parts around. And he was like, no, this should be this and this should be that. And we literally got toe to toe, nose to nose, like about to fight over that song. And within 5 minutes, we had gotten not only calmed down, but we had finished writing the entire song out. And it was crazy.
Oh, wow. So you guys
in the end, it was like, you know what? Let's just put everything together and make the song the best for everybody. And that's what we did.
So you guys had that kind of chemistry from the get-go.
That was one of the main concerns from outside people looking in, is how much of a kind of a hard ass I was. Uh, like when I was in Egypt Central, I would uh, I was going through a divorce. I had full custody of my daughter, and these guys were not as dedicated at some points as I was to being at practice on time and stuff like that. And you know, to me, I wasn't messing around with music. I was gonna make something happen regardless. And then with Anthony, we knew that he was definitely gonna make something happen, and kind of bringing two bulls together is gonna go one or two ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so two A personalities, basically, we knew that there would be at some point some kind of showdown, you know. But a lot of times it made us better, you know.
Certainly.
So,
well, you did.
It definitely taught us a lot.
You did get you. I mean, you did make something happen because in 2008 you signed. Joan Red signed a record deal with Fuel Records. What led to the Fuel Records deal?
Well, behind the scenes, we had changed management. We were looking to do what we could to take the band to the next level. We were looking, you know, we were bringing in new sponsors. We were trying to do everything that we could at the time. We brought in Christy as our Stephanie Christie as our manager, and I believe she's the one who brought in Fuel Records also. That the owner was kind of a hip hop mogul from Orlando area, and she lived in that area. And I'm not sure on the back end how they came together at all, but I know that his label at the time was focused more on hip hop and R&B artists, and we were the first rock artists that they signed.
So what happened with Fuel? That I know that record deal didn't last very long. What led to the termination of that deal?
I just noticed how dark it was. Hold on, I can put a little light on here.
Oh, that's okay.
It's all good.
So basically, we found out that a lot of the stuff was just smoke and mirrors. You know, they brought us out. They got us a tour bus, and they did all this stuff. They said that we were going to be recording in these different studios. We went and toured the studios and stuff like that. But when it came down to, okay, when are we getting into the studio? When are we going to start working on the album? There was just like there was an instant feeling that we weren't getting the deal we were supposed to. And so we just basically at one point had to say, okay, well, if you're not going to keep your end of this contract, then we're not either. You know,
What did they not do that they had promised that they would do?
they never booked the studio time. They never set up any of the things that we had been told were going to happen.
So they signed you to a fucking deal, and then they didn't even send you to the fucking studio?
Yeah.
Well, that's fucking stupid.
I mean, when it came to putting paper down, we never saw anything happen, you know.
So you guys, when you did,
I just don't think they were ready for the type of demand that we had at the time. I mean, the internet was new, right? Mm-hmm. But we were also one of the first bands, is definitely from Memphis, that kind of went viral, if you will, on MySpace at the time.
Yeah.
And MySpace is what drove our success in the beginning.
Yeah, that's a thing I've got in my notes I wanted to talk about also, because at the time, if you weren't played on the radio, or like nowadays, if you're like, I'm a band and I'm an artist and I'm getting all this radio play, nobody gives a fuck. It's like, why aren't you on social media? Why aren't you on YouTube? But like back in the day, it was almost looked down on. In fact, it was not almost. It was looked down on. Like, oh wow, you're on that amateur shit. Like people would turn their nose up at you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was. You definitely had to have numbers to show people. But there's always been a way to fake those numbers too, and our numbers weren't fake. We were actually messaging people and reaching out to people. We didn't spam people at all. We would look at their profiles, listen to their songs that they had on their profiles, and try to find something in common before we even reached out to them. And I think that's one thing that we did that a lot of artists didn't do, and that's why we were able to connect with people before we ever came into their town.
Yeah. Well, the process,
and we treated it like a job. I mean, it was as soon as we got off of work from our day job, that's what we did.
Yeah, that process is very automated now, like with people's recommendations and stuff like that. And it's easy to forget that on MySpace back in 2006, 2000, and probably by the time you started booming, probably 2008, 2000,
late aughts,
Yeah, that really wasn't that much of a thing. But let's talk about those numbers, because your platform on MySpace, 2.5. You ready for this? Million plays on MySpace, and I think it was like something like 60. It was either 60 or 16,000. I don't remember. I didn't make a note of that. Followers on MySpace also. What? So when you guys started to get into MySpace and you started seeing that viral growth online, how much of that was all at once? Was it all at once, or was it gradual?
So the from the beginning, it was kind of all at once. We put a 30-second teaser out for "Show Me the Way," and it basically went viral, right? I mean, everybody started playing it. Everybody started adding it to their MySpace. Everybody started asking for more. And then on top of that, we capitalized with adding Red to your handle or your name on MySpace. And that took off too. It was crazy that you had people from all over the place who had never met you that wanted to be that involved and put Red in their name, and some people still have that in their name on Facebook. It's crazy.
It was a cult
following. We did because we saw, there was an instance also where Anthony was on stage with Chosen View at the time, and he was like, how many of y'all have MySpace? And the crowd goes crazy, and I think that ended up being a fight at one point between him and some members of the band at the time. They didn't feel like that was appropriate, and for us, we capitalized on it, and like I said, we turned it into a job, making sure that every single day we were hitting a certain number on for each of us on MySpace, reaching out to people and trying to start building those relationships and get the groundwork going, so that if we did get to go out on tour, there was going to be people at the door,
Yeah, because also another thing today, things like YouTube and other things that are out there for bands to use, Bandmix, whatever, those are all monetized. MySpace wasn't monetized. You guys didn't get a dime extra for those.
No, we didn't.
Million
no. We got a lot of love on MySpace, but no, we didn't get any kind of compensation from that at all.
So I mean, you had to really want it, because like today a band could do that and that's expected, but it's also like some of the things you're telling me that you guys did is all automatic now. The websites do that anyway. Plus, they pay
Yeah.
you for the
Yeah.
Joan Red didn't have
Right.
that luxury.
But being in a band, especially back then, was a labor of love. I mean, if we weren't doing that, we were promoting the show, going parking lot to parking lot, putting up our flyers, just trying to get a few more people in the door, you know. And I don't think any of the bands nowadays do any of that stuff. Yeah, but
I don't
it
think
was, I mean, it was a constant um, uh, kind of mission of ours to network in any way that we could. Even if we were just going out to a club and meeting new people who knew other people, it was a constant mission of ours to find a way to network ourselves. And in doing so, we met some really great people who helped us out along the way too. Kind of crazy.
so. I'm going to list off, which Roach, by the way, earlier today corrected me on some of these because it turns out my list was not long enough.
Okay.
I'm going to list some of the bands that you guys have either opened for or shared the stage with.
Okay.
And then I want to talk about when you guys started blowing up and touring a lot. So here's the list: Saving Abel, Seether, One Less Reason, 3 Days Grace, Taproot, Trustco, Avenged Sevenfold, Egypt Central, Seven Dust, Stained, and it turns out, thanks to Roach for correcting me, Skillet, Saliva, which is a big band on this show. We love our Saliva here. For those of you that are our listeners, you know why.
Yeah.
Shout out Josie Scott, Eskimo Brothers.
Yeah.
Breaking Benjamin, Theory of a Dead Man, Hinder, and he kept going and he kept going, and I could not write that fast. So,
Yeah. I mean, Taproot was on there. Red, Frame and Hanley. I mean, that list seemed to go on forever. And
yeah,
we were just kind of blown away ourselves. Like, who's on the trust companies on this show? Like, I
yeah,
love Trust Company, you know. And it all started with touring with One Less Reason, our very first tour. And Roach has been there from the beginning. Roach is the one that helped us set that up. And no matter what we do, Roach will be there along the way with us. But it's funny because the first time that we played Tupelo, we came in with One Less Reason and Saving Abel, and Saving Abel actually opened the show. This was before they got signed.
it was before Addicted blew up.
And then, yeah, after Addicted and 18 Days, you know, we played Minerva. Those guys headlined Minerva, you know, but there were several shows on that tour that we played with Saving Abel, or on those tours at the time that we played with Saving Abel as they were coming up. And what a awesome thing to have them coming on this next show, you know, with us and having them do one of our songs. It's crazy.
Yeah, because
But
I remember when
just
Saving
the journey, and that's kind of why we keep going back to the family reunion thing. I mean, all of these guys that we started out with, everybody went off and became successful in their, you know, in their own rights and everything. And the music went in 100 different directions, but it all is coming back together for this event. And,
yeah, I mean, it shows the work ethic that you guys have. Because Trip, by the way, guys, we know Trip's gone. He didn't duck out, and we ignored him. But
yeah,
like even Trip, he's got his own business. He's seen success, even though it wasn't music related. He had his own success, and outside of it, when he left the scene, and
yeah.
I mean, that just goes to show you the caliber and the work ethic that people have put into it, whether it be they were successful people, whether it be on the stage or off.
Yeah.
But you have to work hard to be able to accomplish that.
Well, we all had our own driving forces behind what we were doing. I had my two children, and I was trying to make their dreams come true, doing something that I enjoyed, and that was my that was what was pushing me every single day. But nobody was looking for fame. And it would have been nice if it paid all our bills, but we weren't looking for fortune either. We were just trying to get out there and get the music out there, as long as people wanted it. And, you know, a lot of people wanted it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And a lot of people still want it, which is even crazier. I mean, I still get messages from literally all over the world, and they just been introduced to our music, or somebody else showed them our music, or they found our music, and they want to know so much more about the band, and it's just, to me, it's crazy. I ship CDs literally all over the world. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get a copy of that first EP still?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah,
I think that was, in fact, I think we were looking for, we may have the master recording somewhere, but on that EP, we had an extended version of You Be the Hero.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were thinking about what happened to that.
Yeah.
And so we might have to reach out to our producer and see if that even exists anymore. I'm not even sure.
So if anybody out there has a copy of Joan Red's EP,
I do have a copy somewhere, but we moved last year, and a lot of our stuff is still in boxes, and I imagine that's one of the things that's in a box. So I do have a copy somewhere. And my sister, the very first copy we made, my sister made sure that she got the first autographed copy. So she also has a copy somewhere. So I know there's at least two somewhere.
So if you're out there and you're listening and you have a copy of this, hang on to it, because it's something that you're not going to find again. And if you're somebody out there and you have two copies of it, you can send an email to gunsandradiopod@gmail.com, and we'll talk about an exchange to get it back in. I don't even have side effects anymore. I bought that CD years ago, and I thought I've got some of my memorabilia on display on the walls, and then I've got a lot of it in 2 or 3 not boxes, but like fireproof trunks. Like, this house burns down, my music shit's fine. But
nice.
But I got to digging through those because I was going to try to get some better scans than what I could probably find on the internet of the album covers and stuff like that. Because the one I got it's not in a jewel case, it's in a sleeve.
Right.
And I wanted to get or had. Turns out it ain't there no more. It grew legs and walked off in the last 20 years, I guess.
Yeah, so we get that a lot. A lot of people say, you know what? I think somebody stole my CD. So I don't have it anymore, you know?
Yeah, and that was the thing that was a bitch about that period, is you didn't have the music scene was so popping that there were all kinds of great bands out there. I can't remember the name of the band that would become Crashing Broadway, but that's just an example of the later years. And if you liked that music and you got that and you needed that CD, most of the time you had to know somebody that had the CD, and then it was like, dude, let me borrow that so I can rip it. And I remember, do you know TJ Timms from Crashing Broadway back in the day?
I definitely remember the name, but I'm better with faces.
when Crashing Broadway was starting to get big, they released their second album, or they were big in our local area. They released their second album, and they had a show that weekend that I was going to be at, but I didn't want to wait till the weekend to buy the CD. I wanted to hear it now.
Yeah.
So I happened to get on, I think it was LimeWire or something at the time, and just search for the name. And I downloaded a bootleg copy. So then I texted CJ and was telling him how great the new CD was. But then I was like, he's going to know now that I have ripped off his music. Because then I immediately was like, shit, I just told on myself. And so I had to immediately reply with, now I'm still going to buy the CD. But I just didn't want to wait till I got there till Friday to be able to listen to it. He called
Yeah.
me so excited that we were able to bootleg a CD of his, and I've never heard anybody been so happy that got stole from before.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's always been a labor of love. The music does no good if it's just sitting there doing nothing. So the music has to get out there, and for some people, they're gonna just rip the audio off of a video, or whatever.
Mhm.
But the music is what matters. The music just has to get out there, and so uh, long after we're gone, the music will still be there, and
Yeah.
so I don't care how people get it. Of course, it would be great if you bought CDs. Absolutely, buy the CD.
Download it,
But
pay for the down. Nowadays, though, stealing
exactly.
music is obsolete. Like, it's so much less hassle to just pay the dollar and
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
get it off of iTunes or stream it.
And it was
Spotify.
when we put out that album, it was kind of when before everything switched to just singles and downloads and stuff like that. So, people were still buying albums, looking for albums. And that's kind of coming back around. You see a resurgence of people buying vinyl records and stuff like that. And we've also talked about making a vinyl record. I think everybody would really enjoy that. I think we could put more stories behind the songs and stuff like that on a media format like that. So I think it'd be really good.
I hope you do. I'll buy that. I'd buy a copy of that.
Same here.
Yeah, we had talked about that before any of this happened. We talked about remastering the album and re-releasing it, but definitely vinyl is a format that I think any band should put their stuff on vinyl, just cause.
Yeah. It's in this year for the first time ever since way back in the day, vinyl outsold compact discs.
Oh yeah, I mean it was a lost art form for a while. Crazy though, but I mean, they had to digitize that sound to make it sound like it was vinyl. That's how popular it was.
Yeah. So when you guys recorded, when you guys went in and you actually recorded Side Effects of You, and now you've got some songs in your hands that you can send to people. What led to the decision that You Be the Hero would be the lead single off that album?
We were looking hard at our songs, and we got to pick one that's got to be the single, and we hadn't written it yet. All the songs were good, and I thought Crush would be great for us, but when Crush met radio, they're like, well, it's awesome, but there's too much screaming in it. Can you do a different version? And we were kind of set back by that. Not really insulted, but we weren't going to change it. A lot of people don't know that the screams and stuff on there that Anthony did at the end, that was all pre-production, him just messing around. Those were never supposed to be in the song.
No.
And then it ended up fitting the song so well that it was added,
Does that include
and we weren't
You Be the
gonna
Hero?
we weren't going to be like Red Jumpsuit Apparatus and do 5 versions of the same song to make people happy. And college radio was eating it up. They were like, yeah, we'll play it, and there was definitely we probably could have gotten a lot more radio play had we changed it, but that wasn't something we were interested in doing. And so when we ended up writing You Be the Hero, it immediately felt like there was something different about that song and kind of pushed it up to the top of the list for everybody. Now, I won't ever say that it's the best song that we have, but it was a great single to put out.
So in the song You Be the Hero, right before the breakdown, first off, what's he say right there? Like, I've never understood that. When
he says shut it.
Shut it. Okay, we always thought it was shout it, or somebody said it was Sharon, like, because the Osbournes was big at the time.
We kind of wanted almost like a Korn type feel right there. we wanted it to drop out from the rock and go a little bit heavier, basically. And I don't know why, but he said shut it, and it just stuck.
Oh wow.
I think he wanted some sound there, and that's what ended up sticking. He did the same thing at the end of Changes. Um, at the end of Changes, he never said allow yourself to change, but he would always yell something right there, and I was like, it sounds like you're saying allow yourself to change, and so that's what he ended up doing.
Oh wow.
But a
So
lot of times he had the noise in his head of what he wanted it to sound like, just didn't have the words to fit it. And so
okay.
shut it was kind of just it just made everybody move.
So somewhere out there, there's a recording of Anthony just shouting random shit into a microphone.
Oh yeah, there's definitely, and especially when we were writing any of the songs, he would just throw words in, and there's some shows out there because we were writing the songs so fast, just to have enough songs to not keep repeating our songs in our set, because it started out with like 5 songs. Well, if you're playing any longer than 30 minutes, then you got to play those same songs again.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started writing, and a lot of times we'd have the music ready, but the vocals weren't. And so Anthony, if you go back and watch any of those really old tour videos, you would see him just making up lyrics for those songs.
I mean, you guys also had some covers thrown in there. I know you did Rocky 3, I think it was.
No
No
Easy Way Out.
Yeah,
Robert Tepper. Yeah.
Like I've seen covers floating around out there.
We did Journey, Separate Ways. That was always a real big hit. Yeah. We never did a lot of covers to begin with, but we played it was a biker bar, and at the time I don't remember, I don't know if you remember, but there was a History Channel show about biker gangs and stuff like that at the time.
OCC,
and I think this was on the History Channel, and one of the gangs that they were talking about was the Outlaws or something like that.
Okay.
We ended up playing an outlaw bar one night, and I think we played with Tantric and another band. Well, after everybody was done was actually when people started coming in, and so the gang was like, "Hey, keep playing." I was like, "Well, we've already played our songs." It's like, "Just keep playing and we'll pay you."
Oh,
so
wow.
we
Sweet.
switched up instruments. Anthony got on the drums, and we just started throwing our weight at anything that we could remember or mostly remember. Luckily, Brett at the time had come on to play guitar for us, and that kid could play anything. I mean, we'd just say, name a song, and he'd start playing it, And
stump the band.
So we stayed there for a couple of hours, just throwing covers out there back to back to back of any pieces of songs that we could, and made a little extra money on that night, just jamming around with those folks. And then after that, we were like, well, maybe we should throw some covers in here and see what happens. It was all about engaging the audience for sure. And it was funny because I wasn't even familiar with the No Easy Way Out. I hadn't watched the Rocky movies, especially as much as Choney did. I mean, that was his favorite movies, period. But he also wasn't familiar with some songs that I showed him. I was like, it's crazy. But even in one of our behind the scenes videos that was on YouTube, I was sitting there watching Dirty Diana because I was like, Anthony, you could sing the crap out of this song,
Oh yeah.
And so I was watching it on the video while or on the computer while we were making that behind the scenes video, and you can hear him say he's watching it again, because I was just in my head I saw Anthony singing that song and rocking it. I was just wow. And No Easy Way Out, I think, was also done by was it Five Finger Death Punch that did it as a hidden track on one of their albums?
I don't know. I don't know. I would have to
I
look
can't
it up.
remember. It might have been them, or I think it was Five Finger Death Punch, but it might have been some other heavier band at the time. They did it as a hidden track on their album also. And once I heard Anthony sing the song, I was sold on it. I didn't like the Robert Tepper version of it at all, but once I heard Anthony singing, I was sold on it. And I've always been a huge Journey fan. So when it came to Journey songs, I was like, well, let's do one that nobody else is doing. And that's when we ended up on Separate Ways. It was funny because we couldn't think of what song we wanted to do, and I was listening to Rock 103, just randomly scanning, looking for music, and Separate Ways came on my way to rehearsal. And so once I got to rehearsal, I was like, dude, let's look at this song. You know, the harmonies in that song are incredible, and definitely Anthony's vocal range. And so it just fit. I'm like, whoa, we got another cover to add. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, you guys played the shit out of that back in the day. And one thing, a cover song though, like there's no shame in doing a cover song, because one thing that people don't take into consideration is the art form of working the crowd and keeping everybody up. Like you hit them you hit them at the beginning with something, with like maybe your second best song right off the get go. And then you're going to taper them down. And a good way to get them to boost back up, and to even get the people that may have just be hearing your music for the first time that are in the room right now, is to throw in a cover to spike them back up again. And
yeah, definitely.
Of excitement.
Yeah, and the way that we approached cover songs is that we did not want to sound like the band that did them, but we wanted to sound like them enough to where you would recognize the song. And so we made it our own, you know, and added our own style to it. But it was still definitely a cover song, you know.
Yeah. So when you're getting the song "You Be the Hero" out, I know I heard that one on the radio several times back in the day. What was it like shopping that around to radio stations back in 2008? I think it was 2008, maybe 09.
Well, it was hard. Even, I mean, back then it was really hard to get into radio. We had made a lot of friends with DJs in Tupelo, you know, Jax and Dodson, especially, and in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, we had made friends with radio. In Jackson, Tennessee, we had made friends with radio, and we had Memphis friends in radio. But a lot of times, the radios were not pushing local stuff at the time, and if they did, it was, you know, like 2 o'clock in the morning when you weren't getting the good audience or anything like that. So any song that you were pushing out to radio, especially if you didn't have any kind of money or influence or something behind it, you know, it was always a uphill task trying to get them to just pay attention to it, you know.
I mean, you had so much shit though that was being thrown at them, because a lot. I mean, I hate to say it, most of the local bands sucked, but that's just how it is. Most of them sucked.
Well, yeah. So one thing that we always said from the beginning is we never wanted to work with anybody who didn't want to work with us. There was tons of people who just wanted to make money, and they're like, "Yeah, I'll record you. You know, pay me." And I'll record you. But we chose our producer because he wanted to work with us. We chose, chose who shot the music video for "You Be the Hero" because they wanted to work with us. And when we found those DJs in those towns and areas that we were trying to get into, we found people who wanted to help us, even if it wasn't something that the radio stations wanted to do at the time. they were trying their hardest to help us out. And I don't think You Be the Hero ever got the radio play that it got as much as it finally did when it hit satellite radio. So it was a great single for us in the format that we had, but you hardly ever got to hear it on the radio, unless you were in any of those towns: Jackson, Memphis, Tupelo, and those towns that had the hardcore DJs that were fighting for us.
Did Kevin Russell at KC 103 have a lot to do with that? Because I know that he played Favorite Color by One Less Reason constantly, to the point that I didn't even know One Less Reason was a local band up until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when I was like, whatever happened to that A Lot of People Going to Be Disappointed song? I was trying to it popped back up in my head, and I always thought that was just a one-hit wonder kind of band up until the point I started looking for it. But I remember Kevin Russell would play it in the evenings on KZ10. I was a Radiohead, so KZ105, KZ103. It would become late, or it started out as 103, then it went to 05, then went back to 03. But
so in the end, we had a lot of DJs and radio people from all over that were doing stuff in the background that we didn't know about. I mean, we knew that we had a lot of love, but it wasn't like we could call the radio stations and say, play our song, Mm-hmm. It was up to at the time, it was a battle to get your song out in a time frame where people could listen to it and be like, hey, what song was that? And start calling the radio stations,
Yeah. Because, I mean, like I said, there was a lot of shit out there, and there was a lot of bullshit that was coming out from most local bands. But then, like, you hear Joan Red, like, this ain't no bullshit. And you probably think this, you probably don't even think it's a local band, because even though your album was pretty much self-made, it doesn't sound it. It doesn't sound like a homemade record. It doesn't sound like those shitty I hate to say punk rock sounds shitty, but punk rock sounds shitty. Because you get that fucking, it sounds like somebody's holding a tape recorder up to the speaker when they're recording the guitar. And, and
yes. We've always had that kind of draw. And to me, that was one thing that was always amazing as well. Like when we wrote Sorry It's Over, we didn't have a place to rehearse at the time. And so we did it in my house in Cordova, and we did our best to dampen the sound. We put mattresses in front of the windows and stuff like that. But the cops ended up showing up. And the first thing that the cops said was, you guys sound really good, but I'm sorry, there's been a complaint, like, when is your show? And we ended up getting, one of the officers was an amateur photographer as well. And he ended up coming to our show that we were trying to get ready for when we wrote that song. When we practiced in people's garages and different locations, we always had people showing up. And it was, when we first started, we rehearsed in a wood shop from one of our sponsors for this show, Trim Masters. They had a wood shop out off of Summer Avenue in the middle of nowhere, but it was back behind an apartment complex. And we would be rehearsing and people would start showing up out there. It was crazy. But I guess people thought we were good. It didn't matter who we were at what level. People still wanted to hear what we were doing.
No, definitely. So when you started to blow up a little bit and you started to tour and you started going out on the road and stuff like that, and you were gone out there and all that good stuff, have you got any particularly good stories from touring together that
man,
a funny story to tell? Because we're going to get into some heavy stuff here in just a minute.
So
before we do,
There are literally so many stories. I can tell you one of the most memorable ones that pops up in my head is we did a show in the middle of nowhere, like Watsika, I think it's called, Kansas.
What's
And
I've never heard of it.
yeah, no, neither had we. And we're literally out in the middle of this field, and I was like, "There's no way there's a club out here. We are lost." GPS was new at the time, and so we were used to getting lost. But I was like, "There's no way there's anything out here. Look, there's one light." And we drove towards that light, and it ended up being the club. And this was a underground, like World War II bunker that they had turned into a bar. And so there was literally just one light pole out there, and you would have never known that that club was there if you weren't from the area.
Oh
And
wow!
that night ended up being insane. I mean, the crowd. I mean, it was in the middle of the week. The crowd wasn't huge or anything, but as we're driving up to that place, we're on the phone with our manager, and I was like, "Look, if we end up dead, just to let you know, we're out here in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's gonna find us. Okay, so if this ain't the place, we might be showing up at the wrong place and never coming back." But we met some characters that night. It was crazy. One of these guys, YouTube was kind of fresh at the time, but one of these guys was already popular on YouTube because he used to put a cardboard box over his little motorized wheelchair that looked like a tank, and used to ride it around. Well, that guy was even crazier than that. He ended up like snorting 2 lines of the chalk that you use when you're playing pool, and
Oh my
lighting
God.
cigarettes and putting them in his ears and his nose. I mean, this guy was insane. But it was, I mean, how could you not remember that? That was crazy. And then to end the night, we ended up going out and shooting guns real early in the morning and blowing up some bottles of the tannerite stuff. And it was just like, wow, who would have ever thought that would happen in the middle of nowhere, And we ended up having such a good time with those folks. And we only got to play that place one time. I don't think we could find it on purpose if we tried again. It was crazy, and there was a lot of stories like that where even if it looked grim pulling into the area, we ended up just making the best of everything, meeting some of the best people, and that's how we got more extended family from all these other places, like Jackson, Michigan. Never heard of Jackson, Michigan, and we ended up playing out there with Saving Abel one time, and then all of a sudden we were adding Jackson, Michigan to every single tour that we did, and we would make sure that it was routed in there. And so a lot of people that are coming to this show are driving from Michigan or driving from wherever they had met us to come to this show. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, wow. Well, so we're gonna get into some heavy stuff here, because I'm gonna talk for a minute, because I was there for this little tiny bit of it. In 2010, you guys played Minerva. That was headlined. We spoke earlier about, was headlined by Saving Abel. In 2011, Rick Dunsford, big friend of the show, been on here many, many times. He and I were hanging out one day, and we were just trying to play some Call of Duty. He had just got the new Zombies version, and we were trying to play Zombies. and
Yeah.
And Minerva 2 was in the process, and he had made a point that he wasn't going to have any of the same people on 2 that was in 2011 that was on the 2010 show. That included Joan Red. Somebody got the word out that Joan Red was not going to be on the 2011 Minerva show. And while we're sitting here playing zombies, Rick was one of the first people that had an iPhone. His phone starts blowing up, and I mean blowing the fuck up with thousands of messages. And he's like, I don't know what the fuck's going on, because he couldn't read anything because his phone kept crashing. and he's like, what the fuck is this? So he had to go, and he saw it was a Facebook notification, and he got on his laptop to see what the fuck was blowing up his phone. And I think he ended up having to delete the app just so he could turn his goddamn phone on.
Yeah.
Because it had been spread. Something had happened, and it was spread the red. Everybody was saying spread the red to get Joan Red on Minerva. Now, from your point of view, which it impressed him, that alone impressed him enough that he was like, how can I not have them on now? So on you guys' end, when it came to getting on that second show, what did you guys do to cause that? Because that's been something we've laughed about behind the scenes ever the fucking since.
I really don't have any idea. We always, I mean, Tupelo was we always called it our stomping grounds. And Dunsford was one of the first people that brought us out there to Tupelo. Good Time Charlie's was always good to us. I remember playing that drowning pool show, and most of the crowd there was there for us. It was crazy. When we played that first Minerva, it was like, dude, we'll play this every single time if they'll let us, you know. I believe at the time we weren't even sure if we were going to be able to make that date or not. But I have no idea what happened behind the scenes to get us back on that show. I know it was, I mean, I think that was the same year we were supposed to headline or be on the headlining stage at Memphis in May. And we drove all the way there and ended up having to be turned away at the gate because of that storm that was coming in. And so we never got to play. We were supposed to be, as far as a feather in your cap, being a band from Memphis in May is a huge feather in your cap, you know. But we always had so much love in Tupelo, we would have played anywhere. So I don't know if we even knew that Minerva wasn't a possibility. Maybe somebody knew and didn't tell us. Yeah.
Somebody sure the fuck found out that you guys weren't going to be playing, because there were a lot of people that were not happy about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we definitely appreciate that. I don't recall any event where we're like, what do you mean we're not playing Tupelo? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there would have definitely been a planned response for that. And I would happily share that with you, but I don't remember anything like that. I did drink a lot back then. So.
We all did, brother. We all did.
Yeah.
Well,
in fact, I told my wife one day, I said, you know, when I die, a lot of people are going to show up that you don't know. And their stories are probably going to be, this one time me and Mike were drinking. You know, that's where it's going to start. You know, me and Mike were drinking once. And I said, that's going to happen. So just get ready for it.
So in May of 2011, it was officially announced that Joan Red would be a part of the 2011 Minerva Music Fest in Tupelo. However, unfortunately, less than a month later, we all got the heartbreaking news out of the fucking blue that Anthony had passed away in his sleep.
Yeah.
And there's been a rumor that I have heard from multiple people that we kind of talked about and we want to clear up on the show concerning Anthony's passing. That first off, Anthony was, it turns out, and I didn't even know this until we talked before the show, Anthony was not a drug user. He didn't
I'm not going
die.
to say that he never did drugs, but he definitely was not a drug user.
I think I had always heard it was heroin that took him out.
I never, ever, ever saw that happen or was witness to that. I could, and I have no reason to hide that from anybody. But I'd never seen him ever lean towards that at all.
Yeah.
In fact, he hardly drank. Um, but he did, he was in the rave scene for a little while in Memphis when it was big. And so there was different drugs that were introduced, for different events and stuff like that. But he was never like that. And maybe it was because he had seen so many other artists that we looked up to, their lives were just completely destroyed by that. There was local bands in our area that you literally just saw fall apart. And because of the harder drugs like that, and so anytime that weed or anything was around, it was up to whoever to do stuff, but I never saw him line up to do any kind of drug like that, especially. I mean, those were what we considered the hard drugs. Weed is a plant,
Yeah. We smoke weed on this show all the time. So.
Right. So, and I find nothing wrong with it. I just don't smoke weed, but I did before, and I've tried other drugs, but I never did anything that was hard. And so I would definitely squash any rumor about that.
Yeah. We can definitely put that rumor to bed that it was Anthony was not a drug user. He did not OD on heroin. I think where that comes from is when a musician dies suddenly and out of the blue, like let's be real. When Keith Richards or Ozzy go, we're going to be like, makes sense. I mean, we'll be sad, but it'll be like, makes sense. But like when somebody dies, like how Anthony did, just with no kind of warning, out of the blue, everybody automatically assumes, I think, heroin.
That was, unfortunately, that's the stigma that comes with it, and especially being that age and everything. I've heard other people thought that it was a suicide, and we never saw any tendencies like that with Anthony. I mean, Anthony loved life and he loved music, and he was upset, when different things happened, when him and his longtime girlfriend at the time broke up. But he was already dating somebody else, and he was already.
I mean, that shouldn't have been hard.
and stuff. Right. So I mean, I would never say that he was ever suicidal or that he did any kind of drugs like that at all. But I would say that the timing was right at the beginning of what we now know as the opioid epidemic, And so a lot of our friends, unfortunately, ended up mixing the wrong things and just going to sleep and not waking up, Unfortunately, that happened to several of our friends. And so, Anthony had hurt his back and he was in a lot of pain. We were broke artists that didn't have any insurance. So we would get medicine where we could from anybody we could, And it was the mixture of medicine that ended up being what was bad for Anthony.
But it wasn't I'm taking this pill because I want to get fucked up.
I believe the night before that he had gone to like an MMA event or something, and and by all accounts had a great time and went to bed and just never got up. It never once popped into my head that he had committed suicide or anything like that. That just was not part of his persona at all. Like I can listen to Linkin Park stuff now and be like, I love those songs, but if you really listen, you can be like, there's some sadness there, you know. That
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the same with Anthony. Everything was positive and looking for the positive, you know.
So I'm glad we got to
Even
clear
in
that up.
even in like Prayer for Rain, you know, it's not a dark song at all. We're just saying he's just expressing how much he likes thunderstorms, how great it made him feel to uh, to see a thunderstorm rolling in, you know. But it was never dark or gothic or anything like that, you know. And there was never any of those. We never had those moments where with Anthony where we'd have to take time out from anything to make sure that he was okay or anything like that. Um, and there was a lot of stuff going on at the time, but I would never ever think that he would commit suicide or that he had done any hardcore drugs at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Had
I
he
just.
partied? Probably. Yeah.
Oh well, we
Had he
all did.
partied? Right. But I believe it was the mixture of uppers and downers basically that the body just couldn't deal with, you know?
Yeah. That was. It was tragic. I mean, it was. I remember everybody
Oh,
was
it was, yeah,
depressed.
absolutely.
You
And
didn't. I didn't know anybody that did not know when Anthony passed away. That you had to tell them. Like we'd go to work. I remember going to work and, dude, did you see? Did you see what happened? And we just knew, what they were talking about.
yeah,
Like, dude, I can't fucking believe that. Then,
I had just started my job at the place I still work. And I was still in my 90 days when that happened. And I was like, dude, I'm about to lose my job because there's no way I'm going to be able to keep working. And my job was extremely lenient, and that's one of the reasons why I stayed there even now. Um, but it was just like there's no way that that happened. You know, I was just talking to him. There's no way that that happened, and it got so big that people were reaching out to me that I had like record labels were reaching out and asking if there was anything that they could do. The story got so big that some people wanted to be involved with the story that they didn't even know what was going on.
it
It
was in
was
the
crazy.
newspaper.
Yeah, I mean
Like, not just the
I don't know
obituary
if
either.
you've
Like,
ever
it
seen
was.
like Dear Evan Hansen. Have you ever seen that? But
Mm.
if you haven't, basically an event happens kind of like that where a kid dies and uh, the story gets so big that people start lying about how much they were involved in that kid's life, you know? And I had people reaching out to me that I'd never known, and they were saying, "Thank you for letting me be a part of this." That was one of the hardest things that I had to deal with because nobody wanted to be a part of that, you know? But
Mm-hmm.
it was so big. The story was so big, and it was even on the news, you know,
Yeah.
on our local news that because it got so big. And to us, you know,
I mean, I remember seeing it in the newspaper that Anthony had died. And when I say it wasn't just in the obituary section, I mean, it was like they had his picture, they had the headline, and it even said Joan Red singer, Anthony
yeah,
Basurto. Um,
right.
so, like, it rocked Anthony's passing. Do you think he was aware of how that response that his passing got? Do you think he knew that many people would be so shaken by the situation?
I think one of the most incredible things that happened at the time um, was right after he passed and before the funeral. Memphis saw one of the craziest storms they had ever seen, and I just felt like Anthony was somehow involved because the sky was perfectly set. I mean, it was just a huge storm. And so, yeah, I definitely feel like in some way that Anthony knew that it was a big impact on a lot of people. I mean, the funeral was packed for sure, and I didn't think anybody was going to stop talking and telling stories and celebrating the life of our friend. Um, but it just everything around us was so much. Still felt like Anthony was involved in everything, even meeting my wife, uh, which is crazy. But the day that uh, Anthony passed is also her dad's birthday.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy.
What was it like? Because you guys ended up, I don't know how much you played after Anthony passed. I think we talked earlier and you said there were 2 more shows that you guys ended up playing after that. The only one that I know about that I always thought was the last Joan Red show was at Minerva 2011. What was it like to press on? Who made the decision that we're going to play these last couple of shows and that's going to be it for us?
We were trying to do, well, I was trying to do anything that I could to help raise money for the family. Mm-hmm. Everything that Anthony did, he was trying to do for his little brother, to help his little brother and his mom. So any bit that I could, I was trying to help out. And so I figured if the very least, if we could show up and play and raise any kind of money to help out, that was going to be worth it. But it was also, every time we play those songs, Anthony feels like he's right there with us, and so we wanted people to have that feeling still,
Certainly. And I know what you mean, because even to this day, like you were talking, I wasn't going to say it on air, but I was thinking, like I feel something different when I listen to these songs back. I don't know. I've always felt differently when like You Be the Hero comes up on my playlist or I go seek out Sorry It's Over or something like that. It does feel, I don't know, it just feels different.
I think the whole scene felt different for me after that. I mean, when we were in the scene, the Memphis music scene was a complete brotherhood. There were so many bands that were always there for each other, always helping each other in any way, and I don't know if it was directly related to that, but after Anthony passed, a lot of that just disappeared. A lot of the feeling of brotherhood and camaraderie that we had disappeared.
Yeah, it wasn't long after that the Tupelo scene died out completely.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it all feels directly related. But when we play those songs and we bring back those songs, to me, also it feels like nothing has changed. While we're rehearsing for this show, I'm reminded over and over how much or how great of a vocalist he was. Not just a front man and a friend, but a vocalist. Because he made it hard for anybody to mimic what he did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some people, as soon as they're done singing some of the songs, they're like, "Damn you, Anthony!" in the best way possible. Because wow, and I had no idea that it would be that difficult. It was my decision not to do anything else with Joan Red. Sean moved out to California, which was going to make it difficult anyways, especially at that time. And life just moved on. I got married. I had 6 kids. Yeah. But life just moved on a little bit from the music, right? So although the music's always been there, it wasn't as big a part. And it was like, I don't know if we could ever do Joan Red again, because everybody thinks just Anthony was Joan Red. Not Anthony sang for Joan Red. Anthony was Joan Red. And so it was hard to try to fill those shoes ourselves at all. When it came to this show and the concept behind it, we didn't want to put all that on one person at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy because throughout the years we've had different people reach out to us and say, hey, look, if you ever look for a vocalist, please consider this guy or this guy. And some of those guys are on this show, but not because of that at all, because they went on in their own careers and developed themselves as a vocalist and got their own bands and started doing their own thing. So it goes back to that family reunion thing. Some of these kids were kids literally in our front row at our shows and watching our band back then that are actually going to be singing some of these songs. Yeah, I looked at one of the guys the other day and I was like, man, it's been a long road to here, hasn't it? It's crazy, But wow, I mean, what an inspiration to see just vocalists that Anthony inspired to become vocalists. One of the guys used to play drums in a band back then, and now he's a lead vocalist because Anthony inspired him to.
How different is the music scene in Memphis today versus the late 2000, very early 2010s when you guys were there? Because I know Tupelo's dead. It was it became DJs and foam parties and
there's definitely been a surgence of DJs and I mean, I'm kind of blown away how many people want to go listen to a dude play songs off of his iPad or off his MacBook, But it's crazy how many people they get through the door, and that's what club owners want. They want people in the door.
Mm-hmm.
The scene has changed drastically, but I want to believe that it's going to come back around. I remember when there were several different clubs that you could choose to play at any of these places, Memphis, Tupelo, or Jackson especially. And now it's like, where do bands even play anymore?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I believe fully that it can come back. I've always threatened my wife. I've always said, you know what? If somebody doesn't bring back a good band in Memphis, I'm going to start another band. You know what I mean? Because I miss it, There was definitely a brotherhood that we had. And, all the club owners at the time, Mike Glenn from the New Daisy, he was huge for us. And he was huge. He's always been huge for us. He's a huge part of this show that's coming out. It's coming in March. So the impact that we had as a band seems to keep going on and on. And we helped other people develop their own careers. The guy that shot the music video for You Be the Hero went on to become a huge successful video producer, and the different people that even roadied for us went on to roadie for some of the biggest bands out there. And it was just kind of crazy how it all started with a little band from Memphis and the internet, kind of crazy.
What was it like to do that music video when was it Detroit that you guys had to go to?
It was an Italian restaurant in Detroit, and it was our first time ever shooting a music video. so we didn't know exactly what to expect, but I can tell you, if you ever get to go to one, you better put your patient hat on, because you're gonna do every single thing that you do bigger and harder every single time when you're shooting a video. And it was probably one of the hardest workouts that we had, because we always bring a lot of energy to a show, but when you're trying to convey that in a video, everything has to be huge, you know. And man, we had the full production crew, we had a full makeup team, we had everything, and it was something like we had never experienced before.
Yeah,
It,
I
it
pulled
you
up
know, the
the.
storyline that was behind it, all the actors and everything, that was time that was donated, you know.
Oh wow, I
The
didn't know that.
scene, the mansion where everything was shot, for the actors, all that was donated. And crazy how it all came together and came into that. And I mean,
Were you in
uh,
somebody's house? Did they like get the couch out of the way and the TV out
no,
of the way and
so
shit?
all of that was shot without us. The only thing that we did was the takes at the. It was a big foyer area for an Italian restaurant,
Oh,
and
so
you
that was
could.
the
I
rest.
mean, that was the only thing that we shot. Everything else was all done in the background, and then put together and sent to us, and we were just blown away. You know, I was like, this is a mini movie. You know.
Yeah, it really was.
And
And
the kid that shot it was 19 years old, couldn't even hang out in the clubs with us, you know?
Damn.
And so
yeah,
we were just like, oh, this is awesome. We're shooting a music video, but we never knew that it was going to, take off into them doing so many other great artists work and stuff like that. You know, we never knew that it was a launch pad like that for so many other people. It's crazy.
I'm going to read you some of the comments on this. Blank TV posted it 11 years ago.
Okay.
And I'm going to read you some of the comments because most of them are "Rest in peace, Anthony." Hashtag spread the red. That's most of them. But the
Yeah.
two at the very top, the two top comments are: "This song should have over 1 million views. There's great emotion in this voice." And the second one is, "I never heard of Joan," which I feel like you're going to experience, especially the people listening right now.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of people listening right now that's going to have this same story. And this guy, Matthew, says, "I never heard of Joan Red until after the singer had passed. What an icon of his time. His style, the band's on his arm, his voice, presence, meaning. I loved Evans Blue, but then there was Joan Red, and I will always be stunned by them. I hope you're all doing well. And I chuckle at the album title because it's such a sharp title and such a thought-provoking message that these are the side effects of you."
Right.
That was
Yeah.
6 years ago that comment was posted, by the way.
I mean, I love seeing those comments. I try, even now, if I find new ones, I try to just to give them some love, even if they never see it. Because that was always part of what we did. We, tried to build relationships with people. But I will never get over the fact that our music and Anthony's voice can still impact so many people. And whether they just found us or they've been listening to us for years, the impact that the music had is just insane. The impact that Troney had is just insane.
Yeah, there's still bands that cover "You Be the Hero."
Yeah.
I've heard no less than 3 different bands cover that, and I have found YouTube videos of other bands playing it, and everybody's sentiment is keep this going, keep this alive, don't let this die.
Yeah,
And
and we were talking about that when we were, like I said, before the show, when we were talking about what do we want to do with the music moving forward. We were talking about, like, any of those songs, if you put them on radio right now, they'd be just as relevant as anything else out there. And I don't know how we captured that, but we did. And there's definitely proof in the pudding when it comes to how many people it still impacts, and across the world, not just in our own little area now.
yeah, Well,
we constantly get, that this song literally saved my life, or, this song helped me in so many, and that is incredible. That's anything that that's the main thing any artist should ever hope for,
Certainly. I'm glad, and it's got to feel good though to be scrolling around and find some band covering your song, and everybody in the crowd still knows the song and are still singing along with it, and recognizes it. I mean, Joan Red is immortal. Well, folks,
I agree.
We're having a great talk, but unfortunately, we are out of time. So before we go, though, stick around after the show, guys, because we're going to play you the world premiere of the video trailer for the upcoming Memphis show. But what would you like to say? I'm going to give you the last word. What would you like to say before we sign off today?
I would say that first of all, thank you all for all the love and support that you've shown us and continue to show us. I would want everybody to stay tuned, because there's really no telling what could happen for here. And we're definitely not opposed to what may be coming down the road. Okay. So whatever that means for you, I think there's still a lot of life left in this old band. So we'll see what happens.
Well, let's play that trailer, and I want to thank you for being here, Mike, and I definitely thank Tripp as well. It seems like we thought he would be back before we had to close, but definitely thank you to Tripp for being here. Thank you guys for taking the time to sit down and talk to us and answer a lot of these questions about, Joan Red, that I know I'm not the only one that by a long shot that has been curious about over the years. Again, the show is Memphis Family Reunion, March 22nd, 2023, 7 p.m. at Lafayette or Lafayette's Historic Music Room.
However you want to say it, yeah.
And here's all the deets you'll need to know.
2001 Developments presents The Return of Joan Red, hosted by Lafayette's Historic Music Room. Memphis, Tennessee, March 22nd at 7 p.m. Memphis Family Reunion with special guest performances by Zach Myers of Shinedown,
Jared Weeks of Saving Abel, Chris Brown of One Less Reason, and more.
Also featuring Sons on Fire, Roses Unread, and Sleep Theory. Sponsored by Ed Harris Jewelry, Dan Tech Enterprises, Green Monkey Body Jewelry, and Trim Masters.
Tickets available at joanred.simpletix.com.